A court decision could place a ruling party heavyweight back in detention just hours after he was bailed on corruption charges. A rubber chicken is brandished in the legislature during fights over recalling officials. The focus is on Asia, as navies from around the world gather in Hawaii for this year's RIMPAC exercises. Plus, as the research center that gave birth to TSMC celebrates its 51st anniversary, we look at how it produced some of the world's biggest companies. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. The High Court has responded to prosecutors' appeal against Taiwan's former Vice Premier Chen being released on bail after being accused of corruption. Chen has since resigned as chair of the Straits Exchange Foundation, but still faces more investigation. Joyce Zeng has the latest.
The High Court has ruled that Taiwan's former Vice Premier Chen Wen-chun's release on bail should be reconsidered. They will send back his corruption case to the Taoyuan District Court, which leaves it up to them whether or not to detain Chen. Again, earlier prosecutors had filed a motion to appeal his release on Sunday. This was after Chen was granted bail of over $150,000 US. Chen has been accused of taking bribes while he was mayor of Taoyuan from 2014 to 2022, and prosecutors were angry that he was released when other suspects involved in the case were still being held without bail, and so that Chen should be held to the same standards. Now, Chen is one of the biggest names in the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and served as vice premier under the Taiwan administration. He's already resigned from his latest post, appointed by President Lai Ching-te as the chair of the Straits Exchange Foundation, which handles business matters between Taiwan and China. And aside from stepping down from this role, Chen also risks losing his membership to the party. The DPP is set to meet to discuss whether they should launch their own investigation into Chen. Now, Chen has maintained that he is innocent, but given that there have been previous scandals which ended with Taiwanese politicians serving jail time for corruption, including former DPP president Chen Shui-bian, the party will want to make sure that they don't get caught up in such a scandal again. Luffy Li, Leon Lian, and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
There have been chaotic scenes once again in the legislature over a proposal to tighten regulations on recalling elected officials. Civic groups are joining in the fight against the changes. Tiffany Wang reports.
There's been more drama at the legislature, this time over proposed changes to Taiwan's Election and Recall Act. The main opposition Kuomintang says that the current recall rules are problematic and make it too easy to remove elected officials. The KMT mayor Zhi Long looks likely to face a recall vote soon, and now the party wants to strengthen rules over gathering signatures for a recall. Civic groups protesting outside the legislature say that the changes may not improve legitimacy of recall petitions and may put signatories at risk of leaking their personal information.
事实上，你如果要防堵虚伪联署，有其他更科学的方法，请不要用这种旧石器时代的烂方法。
The KMT says ID checks will help eliminate voter fraud. But there were more clashes today in the legislature between the KMT and ruling Democratic Progressive Party as the bills were up for committee discussion for the second time. There were farcical scenes as lawmakers pushed and shoved one another, with a rubber chicken even brought out at one point to taunt a KMT legislator. As a result, there have been no progress in debating the proposed changes so far. It comes after the KMT pushed through another set of controversial reforms earlier this legislative session, passing amendments that give the legislature more oversight over the executive branch. It seems now that the Recall Act will be the next battleground, and just as with the legislative reforms, the KMT will need to secure the vote of another opposition party, the Taiwan People's Party. If they can do that, they'll have the numbers to pass this legislation, if they can stop fighting long enough to do so. Alex Chen and Tiffany Wang in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The Defense Ministry has detected 14 Chinese military aircraft and 7 naval ships active around Taiwan since Sunday. 13 of those aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered the country's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The zone is not Taiwan's sovereign airspace. It's used by the military for defensive purposes. A Chinese research vessel also entered Taiwan's waters on Sunday, coming as close as 20 nautical miles to the country's eastern coast before being driven away by the Coast Guard. Dozens of warships from around the world are heading to the Western Pacific for live fire drills, part of the world's biggest naval exercise, RIMPAC. This year's drills come against the backdrop of rising tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, so much of the focus is on improving cooperation. Hameokan reports from Hawaii.
Destroyers, submarines, and a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. They're all among roughly 40 warships from multiple countries docked here at Hawaii's Pearl Harbor Navy base. These ships are taking part in the U.S.-led RIMPAC exercise, the largest international Navy drill in the world. This ship, the USS Fitzgerald, has just come back from deployment in the Western Pacific.
Being able to communicate and being able to work effectively proves that whenever a challenge does arise, that we can come together as a team. It's my second RIMPAC, and I'm really excited to go through it again because I was able to see its successes last year, or 2 years ago, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
But a lot has changed since the last time this exercise was held in 2022. The U.S. operates dozens of missile-guided destroyers like this one as a form of power projection, but that power is being challenged as the waters and airspace around Asia get increasingly difficult to navigate. In recent years, China has increased its military presence in the region, conducting dangerous maneuvers in international airspace, even coming within 20 feet of a U.S. aircraft. These actions add to an already complex security environment in Asia. On the Korean Peninsula, North Korea continues to fire missiles around Japan and South Korea. In the Taiwan Strait, Chinese fighter jets skim the airspace around Taiwan as a form of military pressure. And in the South China Sea, China's Coast Guard continues to harass Philippine ships trying to resupply outposts. It's this combination of geopolitical hotspots that is concerning many countries as trust in a U.S. response in a conflict fades.
The balance of power in Asia has shifted, and the United States can't be all things to all people anymore. And the United States loves nothing more than reassuring our allies. But trusting that commitment too much could be very dangerous.
That's why countries here at RIMPAC are looking to step up involvement in the Indo-Pacific to help ease reliance on the U.S. This Australian ship, known as the HMAS Sydney, is getting ready to deploy to the Korean Peninsula.
Sydney is on a 4.5-month deployment, what we call a regional presence deployment. And as part of that, we are conducting interchangeability tests with the United States Navy. We're conducting exercise RIMPAC. We'll deploy on Operation Argos, enforcing UN sanctions in the vicinity of North Korea.
But even this sharing of responsibility may not be enough to ensure the region's security.
So the more and more that these states can get together, I think will be better for stability in the region to show that they can act as a collective force, but we still have a long way to go.
As China modernizes and expands its military, the U.S. and its partners are having to adapt. That's where exercises like RIMPAC come in. The aim is to come up with new and more effective ways of keeping one of the world's most volatile flashpoints from erupting into conflict. Hameokan in Honolulu, Hawaii for TaiwanPlus.
Be sure to stay tuned all this week as we continue our coverage of the RIMPAC exercises in Hawaii. Japan and the Philippines have signed a defense agreement that allows them to deploy their forces in the other's territory. The Reciprocal Access Agreement aims to make military exercises between the two countries easier. Both sides need to ratify the agreement before it takes effect. It's the first pact of its kind that Japan has signed in Asia as the country moves to expand its military budget and defense cooperation with regional partners. The Philippines is also seeking allies as maritime disputes with China continue to escalate. Investigators are looking into the cause of a fatal scaffolding collapse on Sunday. They found faulty materials and a flawed design, which could mean criminal liability. Zhang Ventres reports.
It's been a dizzying 24 hours for the family of Ms. Ke, who died suddenly on Sunday. She was just arriving at work at Formosa Advanced Technologies in Yunlin County when scaffolding used for an on-site building project collapsed. She and one other person were killed, and 3 more people were injured.
我太太就跟2个人用走的撑雨伞过去，走还没到停车场，他就滑下来了，根本没有时间，也第一时间也来不及闪躲，也没有地方可以闪躲。
到医院之后，院方那边就说，妈妈在送往医院前就已经没有心跳呼吸了。
With the shock of the collapse still fresh, investigators are trying to understand how it happened. Initially, some believed severe weather at the time might be involved, but already there are signs negligence might be to blame instead. Wall connectors taken from the rubble have turned out to be substandard, and the design of the scaffolding itself was flawed too.
7楼外墙的模板跟施工架，位于施工时预期最大荷重，妥为设计施工，造成这个人员伤亡的灾害。 立即停工处分，并依照治安法第6条第1项规定，裁罚30万的罚款，并后续追究相关刑责。
County prosecutors haven't yet determined negligence as the definite cause, but they say they won't stop digging into what went wrong and who might be responsible. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
One of Taiwan's top research institutes is celebrating its 51st anniversary. All this week on TaiwanPlus, we're taking an inside look at what it does and some of its cutting-edge innovations. The Industrial Technology Research Institute is the engine that drives Taiwan's tech development. Leslie Liao takes an in-depth look at how it helped transform Taiwan into a high-tech economy.
This is the birthplace of the world's largest chip maker, TSMC, the Industrial Technology Research Institute, or ITRI. Founded in 1973, ITRI is a government-sponsored nonprofit organization. The institute was designed to accelerate Taiwan's technological advancement and help transform the country's economy from labor-intensive low-output manufacturing to a global tech leader.
Back in the 70s, Taiwan was under a so-called planned economy. The kind of planned step by step, like introduce the semiconductor into Taiwan and introduce certain technology, the PC, the ICT technology, etc. So ITRI played a very important role to help.
Today, Taiwan is known globally as a semiconductor powerhouse. Much of that reputation is thanks to ITRI, as it was the organization that first introduced the chip industry to Taiwan.
Without ITRI, Taiwan's semiconductor industry would have never developed into the giant it is today. Pretty easy to say, well, it was the seed of that industry, but I think it was more than the seed, because what it did was it really developed and guided a steady flow of engineers coming out of the Taiwan's educational system into this industry.
TSMC, now the world leader in advanced chip making, was spun off from ITRI. TSMC founder Morris Chang once served as ITRI's head, where he received government assistance to establish the company. Without ITRI, there would be no TSMC.
During this time also kind of created a so-called OEM, the foundry business model, which is a TSMC was formed.
Today, ITRI employs over 6,000 people with campuses, labs, and offices all over Taiwan and around the world. And its main job is innovation.
The scope of ITRI's research is vast. It not only develops high-tech components like semiconductors and computers, but it also does communications equipment, composite materials like carbon fiber for bike frames, sporting equipment, and luggage bags, as well as textiles. And it's even dabbled in things like engines that go into automobiles.
And the list goes on. ITRI also works on biomedical, energy, green, and robot technologies. One of ITRI's main missions now is to service Taiwan's many industries. Whenever companies run into technical or operational problems, they can turn to ITRI for help. If ITRI doesn't have a solution handy, the Institute can help research ways to get around issues so that Taiwan's enterprises have an easier time doing business.
For the small and medium-sized industry, they particularly need our help because they don't do a longer-term research, but they need to have, they may have some problem need to be solved.
For example, as global companies make a push to become more eco-friendly, ITRI has helped Taiwan's companies meet sustainability targets so that they can continue working with their international partners.
The purpose is just partially sponsored by the government, but we do the ITRI does the research to help the Taiwan's industry to grow.
This year, ITRI is marking its 51st anniversary. The science that takes place here has been a driver for Taiwan's economy and industry over the past half-century. And the Institute hopes to sustain Taiwan's innovative prowess well into the future. Devin Tsai, Scott Huang, and Leslie Liao in Hsinchu for TaiwanPlus.
Tune in all this week as we bring you more about ITRI and some of its award-winning tech. Coming up after the break, a community in southeast Taiwan works to keep its raft-making traditions afloat.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Incubator. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The local government Hualien is offering stimulus vouchers to its residents as the area struggles to recover from April's devastating magnitude 7.2 earthquake. But as Chris Goring reports, some people say the region should be getting more help from the central government.
Hualien County in eastern Taiwan is trying to recover from the physical and economic damage caused by a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that struck the region in April. The county government is now issuing stimulus vouchers worth about $100 to each of its residents, expected to benefit about 320,000 people. Hualien's tourism-heavy economy has struggled as hotels have been around only 20% capacity since the quake, and subsequent landslides have damaged trains and tracks. Locals say they're happy to see the vouchers, but wonder if they'll do enough.
因为我们旅宿业做的都是外面来的客人比较多哦，那可能对住宿的这个方面应该不会有太大的提升。我觉得最重要的重点还是在于交通的部分。
所以我们觉得这个大问题是需要中央政府来帮忙了。那但是花莲县政府先来做，我们其实非常感谢，也非常感动。
But others have been more critical, such as Hualien legislator and caucus whip for the opposition KMT, Fu Kunqi.
这也是台湾第一次地方政府为了自救而推动的这样的一个消费券，就是用地方的自有财源来救地方。我想中央应该要感到汗颜。
The vouchers are the latest in a series of stimulus measures for the quake-hit area, which have had mixed success. A new app giving discounts when buying Hualien agricultural products has had a rough start this month, with the faulty app leaving many unable to cash in on day one. Other incentives include credits for young people to spend at Hualien businesses in the arts and culture fields and hotel vouchers for tourists. But fears of more aftershocks and landslides have kept many tourists away, and the area's biggest tourist attraction, Taroko National Park, may not be reopened for years. Despite the challenges, the local government hopes the new stimulus will give a small boost to the wallets and to the hopes of a community in recovery. Patrick Chen and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has made a surprise visit to China to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Hungarian leader had just concluded visits to Ukraine and Russia to discuss solutions to the war between the countries. In a social media post, Orban said he was visiting Beijing for the same reason, calling China a key player in ending the war. Hungary, a member of both NATO and the European Union, hosted a state visit by Xi just 2 months ago. French voters have denied the far right a parliamentary victory. Instead, they have given a leftist coalition the most seats, but no majority. The country is facing the prospect of a hung parliament and political paralysis. Louise Watt reports.
Supporters of the French left take to the streets in Paris to celebrate their surprising win in parliamentary elections, overturning what was a shock first-round lead for the far right.
Notre peuple a clairement écarté la solution du pire pour lui. Ce soir, le Rassemblement national est loin d'avoir la majorité absolue que les commentateurs lui prédisaient il y a une semaine à peine.
The anti-immigration party National Rally came third in the second and final round of voting, after centrist President Emmanuel Macron and his Prime Minister teamed up with the left to keep them out of power.
Malheureusement, l'alliance du déshonneur et les arrangements électoraux dangereux passés par Emmanuel Macron et Gabriel Attal avec les formations d'extrême gauche privent ce soir les Français d'une politique de redressement qu'ils ont pourtant plébiscité largement en nous plaçant en tête des élections européennes, puis dimanche dernier, lors du premier tour avec près de 34% des suffrages exprimés.
The National Rally fell far short of its hopes of an absolute majority. But it's still not a good result for President Macron, who gambled on winning a snap election to hurt the far right and is now facing a hung parliament where the far left could call the shots and threaten his pro-business reforms. Macron's Prime Minister said he would be stepping down.
Je sais qu'à la lumière des résultats de ce soir, bon nombre de Français ressentent une forme d'incertitude sur l'avenir, puisqu'aucune majorité absolue ne se dégage. Notre pays connaît une situation politique sans précédent et se prépare à accueillir le monde dans quelques semaines.
As Paris prepares to host the Olympics, France faces political turmoil and possible paralysis. In his gamble to try to weaken the far right, President Macron has instead weakened his own power and left France's parliament more divided than ever. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Koike Yuriko has won a third straight term as governor of Japan's capital, Tokyo. Koike secured 43% of the vote, beating out 55 other candidates. After hearing the result, she pledged to move ahead with reforms and support the city's residents. Koike is the first woman to serve as governor of Tokyo, one of the most important political positions in Japan. The result is seen as a boost for Prime Minister Kishida Fumio's governing party, which supports Koike. Over 5,000 Samsung employees have launched a 3-day strike over pay and benefits. The workers' union earlier rejected an offer for a 5.1% pay raise and is demanding changes to annual leave and to bonuses. The action may affect the production of memory chips, one of the company's core businesses and a crucial export for South Korea. Traditional bamboo raft makers from Taiwan's indigenous Amis community are working with the local government to revitalize their craft. Irene Lin looks at the 2-month workshop helping keep their traditions afloat.
All hands on deck. These indigenous Amis youth from Taidong in eastern Taiwan are hauling their first scratch-built bamboo raft into the sea for trials. It's part of a 2-month course organized by a local community college and craftspeople to revive a fading traditional art. After 10 minutes of smooth sailing, the raft is declared seaworthy. Bamboo rafts were once an important part of the Amis people's traditional way of life. This is the first time raft building has been taught as a college course. With instructions from elderly craftspeople, the students are building the rafts exactly how it's been done for generations, by sourcing materials from the wilderness, then building them into a stable raft. The course is not the first or only attempt to preserve Amis seafaring traditions. Last month, the Taidong Austronesian Community College successfully sailed a bamboo raft to the Taiwan's outlying Green Island, around 40 kilometers away. On the journey, they had to navigate a powerful ocean current known as the Kuroshio or Black Current. The Amis elders say their ancestors migrated across the Pacific on these rafts, and the college course is just one way they're keeping their seafaring heritage alive. Chris Ma and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to the streets of Pamplona, Spain for the San Fermin Festival and a traditional running of the bulls. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.